If somebody came to you and asked you why slavery is wrong, why tyranny is wrong, would you be able to define it? If you were enslaved or owned by somebody else, or under a system of tyranny, would you be able to see that you are indeed enslaved or that your condition is indeed wrong? Well, what does slavery have to do with morality? In talking about property and freedoms that people naturally have, people talk about the notion of natural rights or natural moral law and what is right or wrong. This was the main argument of conscience or moral suasion used by the abolitionists to end chattel slavery after thousands of years. Though exact definitions may be disputed and our application may be contradictive, around the world most people have a general basic morality, which author C.S. Lewis details from every culture in his book The Abolition of Man. He additionally warns us about the dangers of moral relativism, that which disregards morality, and states that humanity will abolish itself without such long-held teachings. Among those teachings may be shared the Golden Rule, as do unto others what you would have done to yourself, or karma, as you reap what you sow, or the law of attraction, as the energy you emit is the energy you attract. Energy flows where attention goes. As you think, feel, and act, so you shall be. Or the law of cause and effect, as effect invariably follows cause. For every action there exists an equal and opposing reaction. It is often understood that a wrong action is that which results in harm, is involuntary, is any form of theft or a violation of property and self-ownership, or an act of violence. The abolitionists in the 19th century similarly appealed to God's government, or higher laws, as the reason why man is not to be a slave to another man. This became even more apparent when the American government in the 19th century passed the Fugitive Slave Act, which made it further illegal for slaves to run away from their masters, reimbursing those who can capture runaway slaves and threatening those citizens who do not help this initiative with jail time and fines. The fines being $1,000 in 1849 would be $30,000 in 2009.
What we saw were these slaveholders who were very politically connected and very wealthy, and they lobbied the Congress to have a Fugitive Slave Act that not only meant that their escaped property would be brought back, but anyone, black or white, involved in assisting that person to escape slavery would also have criminal consequences.
Such acts only further enraged the abolitionists. Hence, morality is not legality. Just because something is legal does not make it right. Wrong actions include murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and willfully lying. In understanding each of these actions, we may understand how they violate ownership, therefore reinforcing slavery. Murder is the theft of one's own life, which is not rightfully ours to take. Assault is the theft of one's own well-being without right. Rape is the theft of one's own free will sexual association. Theft is the stealing of one's own property. Trespass is the theft of one's own living domain. Coercion is the theft of one's own free will choice via violence or duress. Willfully lying is the theft of necessary information, which negatively impacts one's own ability to engage in their own informed decision-making. In this sense, some form of property is always being stolen when a wrong action is committed, hence the saying, "no victim, no crime." If we use apophasis, knowing what is wrong of us to do or have, we have the right to our own property, and the right to do anything that is not wrong. Another saying goes, "Your rights end where the rights of others begin," as an emphasis of self-discipline, for which temperance is often associated with justice. It is no surprise during the 19th century, many abolitionists, while challenging one big institution, they would find themselves at odds with others therein. They were promoting temperance or self-discipline regarding alcohol, as well as promoting free love, notably later Angela and Ezra Haywood, Moses and Lillian Harmon, women's rights, land freedoms, octagonal houses, spirituality, and more. They covered it all. Only you, they realized, can be truly responsible for your own actions. You must own up to your own ownership, which required empowering the slaves, empowering the abolitionists to act on what they know to be true. Historically, slaves do not know or act on behalf of their natural rights, since they are trained into obedience. Therefore, their rights are rather privileges. They're man-made, based on moral relativism or the whims of their masters. William Lloyd Garrison, a notorious abolitionist in the 19th century, said, "Enslave the liberty of but one human being, and the liberties of the world are put in peril." From the Liberator newspaper, which Garrison wrote, it stated, "The spirit and purpose, the higher law, and its supremacy over nations and governments, as well as individual conscience, the golden rule, and its binding obligation upon all classes, the Declaration of Independence with its self-evident truths, the rights of human nature without distinction of race, complexion, or sex." John Lind, a philosopher, said, "How came there to be slaves in your land of liberty? Are rights which can neither be forfeited by conquest, nor ceded by compact, nor purchased by obligation, alienable by a change in the color of the skin? Why did not these sons of liberty restore their slaves to rights which the one could not acquire nor the other alienate?" Henry David Thoreau, another abolitionist, said, "If the alternative is to keep all just men in prison or give up war and slavery, the state will not hesitate which to choose." Upholding your natural rights, upholding morality is your obligation, not the obligation of those who we call authority or government or the state. For even Lysander Spooner, a lawyer and abolitionist at the time, tells us that the pretense that the abolition of slavery was either a motive or justification for the war, the Civil War, in the US is a fraud of the same character with that of maintaining the national honor. Who but such usurpers, robbers, and murderers as they ever established slavery? Or what government except one resting upon the sword, like the one we now have, was ever capable of maintaining slavery? And why did these men abolish slavery? Not from any love of liberty in general, not as an act of justice to the black man himself, but only as a war measure, and because they wanted his assistance and that of his friends in carrying on the war they had undertaken for maintaining and intensifying that political, commercial, and industrial slavery, to which they have subjected the great body of the people, both white and black. And yet these impostors now cry out that they have abolished the chattel slavery of the black man, although that was not the motive of the war, as if they thought they could thereby conceal, atone for, or justify the other slavery which they were fighting to perpetrate, and to render more rigorous and inexorable than it ever was before. There was no difference of principle, but only of degree, between the slavery they boast they have abolished and the slavery they were fighting to preserve. For all restraints upon men's natural liberty, not necessary for the simple maintenance of justice, are of the nature of slavery and differ from each other only in degree. Frederick Douglass, a former slave and abolitionist, said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Liberty is meaningless where the right to utter one's thoughts and opinions has ceased to exist. That of all rights is the dread of tyrants. It is the right which they first of all strike down." I was just as well aware of the unjust, unnatural, and murderous character of slavery when 9 years old as I am now. Without any appeal to books, to laws, or to authorities of any kind, it was enough to accept God as a father, to regard slavery as a crime. The morality of the act I dispose of as follows: I am myself, you are yourself. We are two distinct persons, equal persons. What you are, I am. You are a man, and so am I. God created both and made us separate beings. I am not by nature bound to you or you to me. Nature does not make your existence depend upon me or mine to depend upon yours. I cannot walk upon your legs or you upon mine. I cannot breathe for you or you for me. I must breathe for myself and you for yourself. We are distinct persons and are equally provided with faculties necessary to our individual existence. In leaving you, I took nothing but what belonged to me, and in no way lessened your means of obtaining an honest living. Your faculties remained yours, and mine became useful to their rightful owner. I therefore see no wrong in any part of the transaction he's referring to when he freed himself. It is only when we contemplate the slave as a moral and intellectual being that we can adequately comprehend the unparalleled enormity of slavery and the intense criminality of the slaveholder. To be a slaveholder is to be a propagandist from necessity, for slavery can only live by keeping down the undergrowth morality which nature supplies. Angelina Grimke, another abolitionist, said one who is a slaveholder at heart never recognizes a human being in a slave. Auburn Herbert, a philosopher, said, "Chorus, each man shall be free, whoever he be, and none shall say to him nay. There is only one rule for the wise and the fool, to follow his own heart's way. For the heart of the free, whoever he be, may be stirred to a better thing, but the heart of the slave lies chill in its grave and knows not the coming of spring." Walter E. Williams, an author, said, "How does something immoral when done privately become moral when it's done collectively? Furthermore, does legality establish morality? Slavery was legal. Apartheid is legal. Stalinist, Nazi, and Maoist purges were legal. Clearly, the fact of legality does not justify these crimes. Legality alone cannot be the talisman of moral people." Etienne de la Boétie, a philosopher from France, said, "Even if liberty had entirely perished from the earth, such men would invent it. For them, slavery has no satisfactions, no matter how well disguised." Stephen Pearl Andrews, an abolitionist, said, "It cannot be rightly said that any man has a right to do wrong, but every man has the right to the freedom to do wrong. In other words, he has the right not to be interfered with in the exercise of his own judgment of right, although it may lead him to do what all the world pronounce wrong, provided only that he acts at his own cost, that is, that he do not throw the burdensome consequences of his acts on others." The full and final abolition of slavery cannot but be regarded by every reflecting mind as prospectively certain. From the New York Evangelist newspaper, "In this republic, the government proclaims slavery as the universal law. It hunts the fugitive and seizes him for his master. It fastens his fetters and holds the key of his prison house." C.S. Lewis, who wrote The Abolition of Man, said, "I am very doubtful whether history shows us one example of a man who, having stepped outside traditional morality, or Tao, and attained power, has used that power benevolently. Either we are rational spirit obliged forever to obey the absolute values of the Tao or natural law, or else we are mere nature to be kneaded and cut into new shapes for the pleasures of masters who must, by hypothesis, have no motive but their own natural impulses. Only the Tao provides a common human law of action which can overarch rulers and ruled alike. A dogmatic belief in objective value is necessary to the very idea of a rule which is not tyranny, or an obedience which is not slavery." When you consider the idea that morality is above legality, and that the abolitionists broke the law in order to free the slaves and free themselves from the government that promoted slavery, it helps you understand that rules are not rulers, and that they're two separate things, and that, in fact, the slave master, by imposing their will on the slave and saying that they have the right to enslave their fellow man, is proclaiming that they have a rule in existence that makes it so that they have the right to do such a thing. The rulers are essentially proclaiming to be the rules, and they take the place of morality. Authority, obedience becomes virtue. It becomes morality. As we saw in World War II, many people dying to the hands of few people who had crazy ideas of what to do with the rest of humankind, and that portion of humankind they considered inferior or not of equal rights. We would understand that we must always uphold the truth, and that is our own individual conscience and the golden rule, and the basic moral teachings that have been taught for thousands of years. By understanding this and really putting it into action, we can understand why slavery is actually wrong and why slavery still has to end now. Because slavery, chattel slavery, still exists, but these other forms, as Lysander Spooner pointed out, can also still exist. And as we move forward, I want you to think, are there other forms of slavery that do exist? And can slavery ever be right? For if they do exist now, people are totally okay with it. How is it justified? How is it that people allow slavery and it doesn't go questioned? Thank you for watching this part of the docu-series Slavery Gone for Good. Be sure to watch our other parts for a more deep understanding as to the nature of truth and action in its fullest extent. If you want to learn more and hear more quotes that have not been discussed in this video, be sure to buy the book Slavery Gone for Good Black Book Edition. This is the most important work in history, and you are part of that work. Do not forget it. As Frederick Douglass, former slave and abolitionist, said, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave."